Welcome to Dahi Raids. So today we're going to be having a bit more musings and thoughts around the Skorid the Halfspawn fusion and what he means for the game. There's a big mix in the community between whether or not he is an easy skip, which he very much could be. He is a straight up damage dealer, or if he's going to be godlike damage for Hydra and a few other places. Let's see why, and maybe have some comparisons to other existing champions that are in the game already. And actually, if you notice here, we can see what type of fusion it's going to be as well. So save up those pots. We're going to need to be leveling some epics for the fusion itself, and the epic looks like he could be quite cool as well. Actually, is that epic a dog? Guys, is that epic a dog? Could this be a new hound for the previous fusion? Interesting. We'll have to see what Plarium come out with in the next wee while. Anyway, Skorid. So he is legendary attack, magic affinity, demon spawn champion. All about Hex and the buffs that he places through that. As we know, he's placing Hex, so he's placing Hex himself. Sorry, the lure of the red dots got me there for a second, guys. You know how it is. So yeah, he places Hex himself, and then on his A2, he single hit attacks, and then on an AoE, single hit attacks everybody else. So it's actually coded as individual hits rather than an AoE attack, and that is really good because it bypasses Hydra's AoE damage mitigation. Now, another champion who does something similar is Trunda, and if we look at Trunda here, who's in the dwarves, this isn't based around Hex now, but if we look at Trunda's kit, this on paper kind of looks like it's the big ticket hit for Hydra, and a lot of people would think this is where all Trunda's damage comes from, because it attacks all enemies and then places an extra hit on enemies not under stun debuffs. So basically repeats the AoE twice. Loads of damage, really good. However, it's not this one. It's this one that's the big ticket item for Trunda, and it's a single hit attack, and then attacks all other enemies with a second hit, dealing 60% of the damage inflicted from the first hit. Now, why is this so good? This is so good purely because of the coding of how it is done. So when Trunda hits on Hydra, and maybe we can start up a quick Hydra battle. I actually have to do my 3 keys, which I will possibly be doing live later on today. We'll just go into normal for quick representation purposes, and we'll get Trunda 1, and I think possibly Trunda 2 out. Where is she? She is a 3-star, so she's further down here. Trunda 1, Trunda 2, and decreased defense. And then we'd usually go with increased attack and Hex. And you want some sort of reset champion to work well with Trunda, because you want to get back to that A2 as much as humanly possible. Or even more. If I had a second Yumeko would be going in there. But what we can do is go with maybe White Dryad, yeah. Now, I don't know, because I've done a lot of re-gearing in the last wee while, I don't know what everybody's gear here is like. But this is just for I suppose, representative purposes, to show you what I mean when I talk about the coding on Trunda's A2 and why it could be very similar for the new champion. So we'll go with the A1 here from Dryad. We'll go with increase attack and hex on everyone from what's her face? Matrala. And so this is the A2. Now this might be crap because this might be the Trundle that is unequipped, but we'll hit it here. So this is a single hit attack and then attacks all other enemies with a second hit. They are also single hit attacks. But what happens with this now is that the damage spread on this portion of it somehow gets multiplied through all of the debuffs and buffs again. So it ends up being, I won't say exponential because I think I'll use it wrong, but it ends up being a godlike increase. So one hit here, we see it took a massive chunk of mischief and applied it everywhere else, nearly killing Decay, who hasn't been hit at all. And then the second Trundle will go. That one wasn't equipped, so that's the funky one. But we can see exactly what's going on there with everyone. We'll place our debuffs again, and it's on 1x speed. We'll reset Yumeko. We'll place our hex and increase attack again. We'll hit here again, and you can see the crazy numbers popping up everywhere. So that's why that type of coding on an attack is so important. And this is even the unequipped one, or maybe not unequipped, but it's missing huge amounts of items. And you can see the damage spread, even though it's meant to be 60% of the original attack. I done 500,000 here, and then on these heads I done, I think, 3 times that. So I think I done like 15 million on these 2 heads. Now, like I say, Skorid is going to have an attack similar to that. So he will have on his A2 an attack that does a single attack and then spreads out and hits every other head or every other enemy that has a hex debuff on it. If it's coded like Trunda's, that is going to be absolutely massive. So it will be huge. However, we also have the likes of, let's see, Knights Revenants and Marinax maybe, who was a skippable fusion for many. Where's Marinax? Is she a Dark Elf? Yeah. So I went for Marinax, I just thought she was cool. But she has a kit based around Hex as well, and gets extra hits if the target is under Hex. And the extra hit is calculated individually. Places Hex and decreased defense herself, so on paper she's really good, and then ignores unkillable and shield if they're under Hex, and places an unkillable on herself if the champions, for different lengths depending on how long they have a Hex debuff, and also increases attacks. So based around Hex, grants herself extra hits based on it and all that kind of thing, does debuffs, does a lot of similar stuff to Skorid. You never see Marinax used. She's a cool champion, she has a lot of the right things in her kit. She has increases to her own damage, she has decreased defense, she has extra hits, but there's nothing special about her kit. Her attack and her multipliers just aren't there. So he could be like Marinax. You know, we don't know at the moment. I suppose another really good example might be Rule the Huntsman. Am I in the right thing for Ruel? I was full sure Ruel was a high elf. Is he a dark elf? I don't have him myself, so... Ah, he is, yeah. Okay, so... he also has Hex in the kit as well. So on his A1, he has a 50% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense, so he's bringing his own decreased defense. He also transfers a random debuff from himself to the target if they're under Hex. So again, we're talking about hits based around Hex. Attacks all enemies and places an extra hit on enemies under Hex debuffs on a 3-turn cooldown, and will ignore 25% of each target's defense if there are 4 or more enemies under Hex debuffs. So, this sounds a lot like Halfspawn's kit. This sounds very, very similar to what Halfspawn is coming out. And this is why we need to see playtesting. Because we don't have multipliers, and we don't have the calculation of how those extra hits are going to be coded. If it's coded like Trunda, it's great. If it's coded like this is still really good. This is a nuke. Don't get me wrong, this is a nuke, but it's nothing on the level of what Trunda has. Not even close. Not even on the same continent, guys. And this reads very similar to what Torik's Halfspawn is going to have. And then on the A3, he buffs himself, places a hex on all enemies, again places, and perfect veils on himself and fills turn meter. So really good champion. This is on a 4-turn, that's on a 3-turn. This boosts his turn meter, gets him back around to this a bit quicker. And then for his passive, he decreases the speed of enemies under Hex by 5% and decreases the resistance of the same enemies by 10%. He also increases the damage enemies under Hex receive by 10% and decreases the value of heals they receive by 30%. They don't stack, obviously, if you have loads of rules on the same team, which would be quite nice. And he comes with a nice crit rate aura. So that's a good kit, and he has a huge attack, and I believe good multipliers as well. And even with all of that in the mix, you don't see Ruel talked about in Hydra comps or damage comps or anything like that. Again, it's all going to come down to the playtest. It's all going to come down to the coding on that A2 for Torix. Or it's not Torix, Skorid. Torix is a different champion. We're going to call him Halfspawn because I keep on getting that wrong. So yeah, so Halfspawn's kit is very, very interesting and could be very good for waves and very good for Hydra. However, we're not going to know just yet until we get the CCs having the playtest, and we get maybe the likes of Saf looking at what the coding is for that A2. So those are my thoughts. Where on a scale of, I suppose, Trunda to Marinex do you think Torix is going to land? Me personally, I think I'd love to actually see it being a Trunda type coding, and that's for a simple fact that this is a fusion that's going to be achievable for nearly everybody. Anybody that's playing for a while should be ready and able to do a fusion, and that kind of gives everybody a little bit of a level playing field, because we all have if we all have the weapons of mass destruction, if everybody's a super, nobody's a super. I think that was in The Boys, wasn't it, recently? So look, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.